Hi guys, all right, so here is the month ahead report for the Gemini New Moon cycle that begins tomorrow, June 18th, and runs all the way through to July 17th. This is month number 3 of the current eclipse cycle that we are in, and as always, I like to go back to the set of eclipses, kind of do a little bit of a recap and tie in the themes so that we have a better understanding of everything that's taking place around us. And I do hope that you like visuals because I'm a very visual kind of person and I do like to lay it out. That's my Virgo moon. I like to organize things, so I hope that you enjoy that as well. All right, so we had the last set of eclipses on April 20th with the Aries New Moon solar eclipse that came in. And then 2 weeks after the May 5th Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse. And those set the theme for the 6 months ahead. Remember, eclipses take place every 6 months. And when we track it and we look at the themes that are surrounding the planetary aspects of those eclipses, we get an understanding of what we can anticipate as far as upgrades and potential challenges for the next 6 months. And I always like to start off with the Sabian symbols. I think they bring in a lot of insight as well as the planetary aspects. But that Aries new moon solar eclipse that happened on April 20th at 29 degrees of Aries, no less, a very warrior-like energy, came in with the Sabian symbol of the realization of natural boundaries. A focalization was the key word. And the Scorpio full moon lunar eclipse that happened 2 weeks later, saying things that needed to shift in order for us to bring that in, came with a Sabian symbol of future-oriented growth, the early steps in the development of a mind seeking to be attuned to a higher level of human evolution. Now, as I looked at both of those eclipses and what it was saying, especially with the solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, the theme of pioneering really came through for me, especially in the wake of an eclipse cycle that we had just completed that ran from November to April. That was really all about birthing the superhero within us. And so with this eclipse, getting ready to pioneer forward as a superhero ahead. Now, there was a reason why, of course, I said that again. A solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries. It's very warrior-like energy, but it was not only that, it was a solar eclipse at 29 degrees of Aries, square Pluto, which had just moved into the sign of Aquarius, something that we have not seen in our lifetimes. The last time that Pluto was in Aquarius, around the inception of the United States back in 1776, around that time. So this was about charting very vast new territory, and that's why I dubbed it Pioneering for the Long Term, but I redubbed it at that time Pioneering Radical New Ways Forward. And by the way, you'll see me, I like to do this 6-month forecast of the eclipse ahead, but I might change, and I do tend to change the title of each moon cycle as we approach them, just if I think it's just going to help people better understand the energies more, or the themes for each moon cycle. All right, so with that, we entered into month number 1 of the eclipse cycle, and that was the Aries new moon cycle that ran from April 20th to essentially May 19th. But it also set in stone the overarching theme for this eclipse cycle, which is all about pioneering radical new ways forward. In that month, it was setting the trajectory for that. We then continued this theme of pioneering radical new ways forward, entering into month number 2 with the Taurus new moon on May 19th. And it was a significant Taurus new moon, one I had initially called expanding into new asset classes, but redubbed building an intrinsic sense of self-worth. And that had a lot to do with the fact that we are in the last hurrah days of the North Node in Taurus, really calling for greater states of self-reliance. That South Node in Scorpio, really calling us to get out of entangling situations, getting to the core of what values and priorities we have, and doing the inner work first to then match our external realities. And it was, like I said, a significant new moon because it also came with a Mars opposing Pluto that was going to definitively change our sense of ambition, our sense of direction, our sense of motivation, and really call us to transform any codependent ways that we have about how we go after things, because it was Mars at 29 degrees of Cancer, at the very last degrees of Cancer, and then coming into that opposition with Pluto. But at the Taurus new moon, it was at that 29th degree of Cancer. And 2 days later, we had the Sagittarius full moon. And what was significant about that one was that we had Venus opposing Pluto. And so essentially, this was like a major overhaul when it comes to our values, our priorities, our ambition. And it's been a little bit trippy, to say the very least, over the last 2 weeks. It was a Sagittarius full moon, kind of calling us to expand our minds. And then we had the last quarter moon in Pisces, which is a need to surrender as realities were significantly shifting. And so there was, and we should be feeling into this renewed sense of our value systems, who we are, what we're about. And another thing about that Taurus new moon cycle was it was a major month of bifurcations. I believe on the last month ahead report, I did say that it had bifurcation written all over it. Some people choosing one way, others choosing another, and very much as it relates to value systems. Now, one thing that I know I've been talking about on the membership group quite extensively since the Sagittarius full moon, with Venus moving into the sign of Leo, and with the understanding that we have this upcoming Venus retrograde in Leo, was that these last 2 weeks were kind of setting the stage for this upcoming Venus retrograde in Leo. And that Venus opposing Pluto was, in a sense, setting trajectories for the upcoming Venus retrograde in Leo, which for me begins with the Gemini new moon around that time, because that's when Venus will go into pre-shadow. I'll get to that in just a second. But as we're completing this Taurus new moon cycle, and I'm recording this on June 17th, the time of harvests, we really want to be reflecting on all the changes that have happened since May 19th, who we are, what our values are, and what we're really choosing as it relates to priorities, people that we engage with, and do we really truly align with the same values? Super important, because that again is the stage has been started to be set as it relates to the upcoming Gemini new moon and Venus pre-shadow. And that's what I'm going to get into primarily today. We're entering into month number 3 with this Gemini new moon, which runs from June 18th through July 17th. And initially, back at the time of the eclipses, I did call it establishing new communication channels. And while I do believe that we will be doing that, that's part of the upgrades that are coming in for those that are seeking higher consciousness. I am redubbing this one Preparing for New Paradigms. And yes, we will, in order to do that, we'll be establishing new ways to connect. Like I said, I'll get into it. But this is going to be a significant moon cycle for a couple of reasons. Not only is it a Gemini new moon that is square Neptune and opposing the galactic center, this means that that sense of reality shifting that we've been feeling over the last 2 weeks with the Sagittarius full moon and the last quarter moon in Pisces, This continues throughout this next month. Reality is going to seem a little bit funny. We're going to have to navigate reality in a whole new way, and primarily through the advent of intuition, of being able to navigate kind of a foggy energy. Gemini is something that is a sign that likes things clear and cut, and it likes the details, but in a square to Neptune, all that gets fogged up. And in an opposition to the galactic center, really needing to use our intuition and really tuning into higher consciousness in order to be able to navigate all that. Like I said, the theme for me with a July 3rd Capricorn full moon, so it's a Gemini new moon with a Capricorn full moon, I believe that paradigms will be shifting. And so this is a Gemini new moon that is asking us to prepare our minds for new paradigms. And not just any new paradigms, major new paradigms, because right after this Gemini new moon cycle, we have the midpoint of the eclipse. For those that have been following me, it's always at the midpoint of the eclipse that the tangible manifestation of what the last eclipse is called for, remember, pioneering radical new ways forward, that starts to really present itself in a very tangible way. But there's other parts of this midpoint of the eclipse or other transits that are happening at the midpoint of the eclipse that magnify this for me even more. Primarily, we have Pluto coming into an exact square with the nodal axis, switching signs, so the north node moving from Taurus, which has been really calling us to become more self-reliant over the last 2 years and get out of disentangling situations. Now moving into the sign of Aries is saying it's time to pioneer forward. It's time to have a healthy sense of independence and creativity to pioneer forward. Hence another reason why we have this overarching theme of pioneering radical new ways forward. But also at the time of the midpoint of the eclipse, which comes exactly around July 22nd, we have Venus going retrograde. And so, as you know, for those that have been following me, you know that the pre-shadow is the most significant portion of a retrograde. It's usually where we have the potential to make some missteps, especially as it relates to the theme of that planet and the sign that it's in. In this case, Venus, all about values, self-worth, priorities, relationships, and money dynamics. So very interesting that we had a Taurus new moon cycle all about intrinsic sense of self-worth, kind of laying the foundation for trajectories we would be moving into with this Gemini new moon that's calling us to prepare for new paradigms. Well, after the midpoint of the eclipse, around that time, we'll have Venus going retrograde. And so during a retrograde, we usually get themes as it relates to realizations of where we made some missteps. And so that will be coming through after the midpoint of the eclipse. Hence why it's very important in this month number 3 to really pay attention and do the best that we can to not fall into those missteps, to maximize the benefits of this Venus retrograde, to kind of thrive rather than kind of get kicked over by it all, which again, I'll be talking about a little bit on this month ahead report, but more extensively on the subscription that I have. And you are more than welcome to join the subscription if you are watching this out on YouTube, Rumble, or any other social medias that I'm posting this on, because that's where I will talk more specifically about these transits as we go through them each week. But make no mistake that at the time of the midpoint of the eclipse, our whole sense of reality will be changing significantly with Pluto squaring the nodal axis, Venus going retrograde, and the nodal axis switching signs. This is no small change. This is a major change. And if we're looking at collective news, we can see the rumblings of that already starting to happen. And we have some significant moon cycles after the midpoint of the eclipse, which will fully bring in the full harvest of this whole needing to pioneer radical new ways forward. We will have the Cancer new moon, and that one will be Pluto square the nodes, as I said. We will then have the August 16th Leo new moon cycle, and that one will be a new moon square Uranus, another significant shift. And then wrapping this whole eclipse cycle off, we will have the September 4th Virgo new moon, and that one is kind of a flow state of moving forward. It'll be trine Uranus and kind of really shifting us into this whole theme of pioneering forward. All right. I also like to take this slide and once again go back over some of the themes that I talked about at the time of the eclipses. What were those eclipses saying about this pioneering of radical new ways forward? And one of those themes was that once again, as with several of the eclipses that we've experienced, that there would be more bifurcations, and bifurcations as it relates to conscious and unconscious expressions. Some really awakening to this higher level of consciousness that we're being asked to awaken to, versus those not. And we would be seeing this playing out with some of the major themes of how we deal with paradigm shifts. Are we in denial? Are we doubling down on force-driven motives, trying to control things, falling into anger, aggression, blaming the external world? Or are we realizing that everything is a reflection of what's going on within us and doing the work to shift that, to shift what the frequencies that we're operating with, and shifting our paradigms or our realities in kind? How do we deal with limitations? This is kind of an overlap. Again, are we in denial, rigidity of thinking, falling into fear and panic? Or are we doing the work to go within to realize it's all about frequency and manifesting new pathways from within? Again, also managing fear, a similar topic. And then how do we engage with others? Are we doing it from a place of empowerment, or are we, again, trying to control? And those two main themes would be very present as it relates to the bifurcations that are taking place. So with that, this whole idea of the Gemini New Moon, month number 3, what I've redubbed as preparing for new paradigms, I'll go ahead and get into the overarching themes that I see for this Gemini New Moon, which will be happening at 26 degrees of Gemini, and I will be talking more extensively and in detail on my subscription and the weekly video that I do for the subscription. But I will go into more highlights here. So we have the Gemini New Moon at 26 degrees, as I said, directly across from the galactic center, and square Neptune. Highly significant. Gemini likes to have facts and information, and it's usually that sign that gives us that clear thinking and logic and being able to connect dots. But a square to Neptune says there's a lot of fog and needing to decipher and being able to navigate things with intuition, which hopefully we'll be tuning into through that opposition to the galactic center for those that are, like I said, able to align themselves and stay centered and have those channels of communication within themselves open. I always like to start with the Sabian symbol. This is reaching out towards participant in a larger whole of mind-structured existence. And I thought to bring in both the Sabian symbols for Dane Rudhyar and Elias Lonsdale. to bring in a little more depth and meaning to this Gemini New Moon and what it's trying to tell us. So for Dane Rudhyar, the keynote, reaching out towards participation in a larger whole of mind-structured existence, the contrast between this and this preceding symbol is significant. The first revealed the periodic opportunity nature offers man to penetrate beyond mere appearances and the glamour of existential abundance, the massive green leaves. Now we see at work another process which depends upon the individual, a conscious attempt to leave behind the tribal, instinctual stage of earthbound existence and to merge into the realm of mind and complex, tense interpersonal relationships, i.e., the city. The wild drives of nature are reaching toward a situation in which they will be tamed. So it comes with a keyword there of repolarization. For Elias Lonsdale, his is kind of interesting. Taking your greatest attributes, tucking them away for safekeeping, and going on without them. Daring yourself to operate without the huge advantage of knowing everything ahead of time and dropping down into a position of moving by primal instincts, each moment naked and following the live track of what arises, turning yourself into a wide open, vastly impressionable, fluent, and flexible front line participant, but keeping on ice the most astounding array of greater gifts, the ones that are too much for this world right now, and being quite inwardly assured that sooner or later you can and will draw upon and tap into the greater frequencies of awareness in order to take the path even further along than spontaneous presence could begin to imagine. Both of these Sabian symbols give an indication that we're really stepping already into new paradigms, that we're going to kind of have to leave behind what we think we know in order to move forward. And that cannot be further emphasized by a Gemini New Moon squaring Neptune, really calling us to navigate with intuition and with this open mind to be able to receive in guidance as it comes through, with an opposition to the galactic center. So I'm going to get into a couple of themes as I see the month ahead. Again, it's a Gemini New Moon with a Capricorn Full Moon on July 1st. With a Gemini New Moon, this is about upgrades in perception and how we gather information. And with a Capricorn Full Moon in 2 weeks' time on July 1st, the full moon always saying we need to have something needs to shift in order to bring those upgrades in. This is structural shifts as it relates to our sense of reality. And I throw in a caution there. This could be some harsh reality checks. So just keep that in mind. Again, giving rise to this understanding that we are preparing our minds for major paradigm shifts over the course of this moon cycle, which again spits us off into the Cancer New Moon, which is essentially around the time of the midpoint of the eclipse. So with every moon cycle, it's bringing us upgrades. We're always evolving. We're always learning something. We're always upgrading ourselves. So when it comes to this preparing the mind for major paradigm shifts, what could we be looking at as it relates to upgrades? Well, we're going to be pioneering radical new ways forward once again, but this time when it comes to how we take in and gather information, specifically using intuition, maybe telepathy, dreams, messages from spirit, etc., to be able to do just that, to prepare our minds for major paradigm shifts. Remember, there are no coincidences, and we're always getting clues and information around us. Another thing is being able to decipher fact from fiction and using discernment. Ceres is directly opposing that Neptune. There's kind of like a grand cross happening on this chart with Ceres in Virgo, and that's also the release point of that Neptune in Pisces. the opposite sign, Virgo, saying we really need to be able to use discernment as part of our intuition. And with the theme of Venus being in a semi-square to the new moon, but also because Venus enters into pre-shadow that day in the sign of Leo, this is one that we're really being called to step up with courage and an open mind. Really embody that sense of a lion that can see, even in the midst of confusion and chaos, hold that inner resolve and sense of courage, even in the face of confusion. All right, so I am someone, I know that shadow work, this term, people don't like it. They hate it. We're complete, we're filled, we're fine, we're whole already, and I do agree with that, but I do still also agree that we are not perfect. And when things can get panicked and chaotic, there's a tendency to fall into fear and panic, and then we get into our egos, and we have the potential to fall into force-driven motives that causes all sorts of problems for us. The whole point is to step into that greater sense of courage, stay centered, remain calm, but it's going to test our fears a bit as well. So when it comes to shadow work, we're going to be looking at or needing to take note when we are falling into these know-it-all perspectives. For me, whenever we're looking at a planet or a new moon or any transit that's happening, we always want to look to the opposite sign for balance. This is a Gemini new moon. We need to look at Sagittarius for balance. And what is one of the Sagittarian shadows? And that could be this know-it-all perspective. I'm superior than you. I have all the answers. Gemini, it's all about gathering information, looking at details, and keeping an open mind. So we really want to pay attention to any superiority complexes, those know-it-all perspectives, and where we're discounting details and facts and information because we think we have all the information we need. Be very careful with that. Reality is not what it seems with a Gemini new moon squaring Neptune and certainly opposing the galactic center. There is a much broader perspective wanting to come in. Also with the Venus retrograde, pre-shadow in the sign of Leo, the themes of the shadow sides of Leo and Aquarius, which is where we're seeking external validation. We need that attention. We're craving that recognition and attention, and we want the spotlight on us. And so we can be very disruptive and creating dramatic displays. Leo can be drama, attention-seeking behaviors, hedonistic behaviors, also disruptive behaviors. Which blocks us from being able to stay open to signs and information as we're being called to gather clues in preparation for major paradigm shifts to come in. Do keep in mind that we have Venus in pre-shadow from June 19th through to July 23rd. So basically the entirety of this Gemini new moon cycle and into about 5 days of the Cancer new moon. And this is one where we want to be very mindful when it comes to relationship, money dynamics, contracts, anything where we're writing down, what we value and what we're going to get back from another. This is not a time to think that we have anything set in stone, and also be very mindful of what situations we are engaging with. Keeping in mind that the last Taurus new moon was really setting the stage for us in regards to this, as it was trying to help us build an intrinsic sense of self-worth that does not need external validation, that has the courage to keep an open mind, to consistently apply values across the board. Not only what's good for me is good for me, but it's also good for you, and vice versa. and keeping up with integrity as well. So do keep that in mind. A little bit more on Venus in Leo. I know on the monthly newsletter, I did say that I was going to maybe offer up, or was going to offer up, a webinar report outside of my subscription, but I've since then decided, hey, if you are interested in really understanding the full story of Venus retrograde in Leo, jump on to the subscription, because I will be talking about it in length there. We can't look at this Venus in Leo as just separate in itself. It really has overlapping themes as it relates to the last eclipses, as it relates to Saturn's retrograde in Pisces, Pluto's retrograde back into Capricorn, this last Taurus new moon cycle, this Gemini new moon cycle, the midpoint of the eclipse. It's all wrapped into one. And so I can't just make a report just for the Venus in Leo. It's all really interwoven with the overarching themes. All right, but I'll just give a little bit of an understanding of what Venus in Leo looks like with conscious and shadow expressions, just to keep our eyes open as it relates to that. In conscious expressions, it's really calling us into that brave lion, that call for inner courage and social responsibility, using our innate gifts in service to others. It does give us heightened creativity, and it does promote joy and inspiration for others. It is all about inspiration and leading the way forward, kind of like that brave lion. But in the shadow expression, this is the part of ourselves, and I say the part of ourselves, not just those with Leo placements. All of us have Leo on our chart, so all of us need to be looking out for this. This is the part of us that is, look at me, I need that attention. I'm seeking external validation from others. It performs in order to bring in attention to itself. It's looking for recognition first, rather than stepping into a sense of passion and contribution, and from that naturally receiving recognition and attention. It's moving forward with the purpose of getting that recognition and attention first, and it can be drama prone and erratic. I'm just wanting to make mention that we have this Gemini New Moon squaring Neptune, confusion, chaotic, scattered, things don't make sense, and Venus in a semi-square to that new moon. A lot of people with emboldened behaviors, thinking they know it all, thinking they have all the answers when they don't. And so for those in more conscious expression, this is going to be a time of testing, because it's almost like having to embody that brave lion, and maybe sometimes stepping back and watching train wrecks as they happen, because there's no way of being able to interject when so much ego is involved. And so yeah, it's one where it could be a little bit challenging. That Gemini New Moon square Neptune also indicating that this is where we just want to be very discerning of the situations that we're involving ourselves in. The information may not be very clear and forthright, and needing to use intuition and, like I said, discernment to navigate. The last time Venus was retrograde in Leo, for anyone wanting to maybe make connections, was back in the summer of 2015. I know that was a significant time for me. The pre-shadow at that time ran from June 21st through July 25th. This is where we may have fallen into certain situations that during the retrograde from July 25th through September 6th, we had to course correct. And then from September 6th through October 9th was the post-shadow, where we moved forward once again. So you can maybe think about those times to remember what was going on then, and kind of get an understanding of what Venus in Leo retrogrades feel like. All right, now this is the month ahead breakdown of transits. For those out on social medias, you will not be able to see the transits themselves, but those on my subscription will do, and you can actually get a copy of this from the member dashboard and print it off and follow along as we go throughout the month. So I do like to do a breakdown by week, understanding that there is a kind of there's 4 phases for me of a moon cycle. The first is the first week, is usually where new situations seed themselves. And then we step into the second week with the first quarter moon, and that's where we have quite the bulk of the shadow work that needs to happen. And by the time we reach the full moon, we get the sprouts, kind of significant sprouts to what the new moon called for. And in the last week, week number 4, this is where the full harvest start to come in. So with that, I'll just quickly go over each week here, just so that we can get an overarching understanding of how this is going to kind of flow. So in week number 1 with the Gemini New Moon, I'm calling it a week where we want to cautiously move forward. I'm calling it cautious steps forward. And that really has a lot to do with some of the transits that are coming in at the very beginning. We have Venus entering pre-shadow, the Sun squaring Neptune, and Jupiter sextiling Saturn that just went retrograde, all at the same time that Mercury sesqui-squares Pluto, Venus sesqui-squares Neptune. So this is a time where we want to be very cautious with how we're moving forward, remembering it was a Sun square Neptune, or a new moon square Neptune, one that reality might not make sense, and we need time to navigate through it. It ends with Mercury squaring off with Neptune right before the first quarter moon on Monday the 26th. So again, we end the week going, what's going on? And there's kind of like a distracting element to that whole week, one that we really need to navigate with discernment and intuition. And just a note, we do have the summer solstice playing out in the first week with the Sun entering Cancer, always a significant date to look into on Wednesday, June 21st. We then will move into the second week with the first quarter moon, this one happening in the sign of Libra. And I'm calling this week Courageous Resolve Through Storms. This is one where we're really being called to embody that Braveheart lion with Venus in the sign of Leo. And that's because we have quite a number of sudden situations arising just in the first few days of that second week. Mars will be squaring off with Uranus, Mercury quincunx Pluto, Sun semi-square Uranus, Mercury semi-square Venus, lots of semi-squares, and then Neptune going retrograde on Saturday, July 1st. It seems like there's going to be some sudden, unexpected developments and kind of like stormy energies in that week that we want to be mindful of. And for those of you on the subscription that can see these transits, you'll see that I have highlighted the Venus transits in pink so that you can see the significant dates of Venus that we want to watch out for throughout the pre-shadow, and we will be connecting dots to during the retrograde. So yeah, getting back to that week number 2, always about facing challenges. This is about holding that courageous resolve through maybe some storms that kind of test our minds and starting to shift paradigms. We do end that week with the Sun sextile Jupiter, the semi-square Mars, and also Venus squaring off with Uranus, where Mars was at the beginning of the week. So this is a lot of shifts that are going on, not only within us, but in situations around us as well. We then will move into week number 3, where we will have the Capricorn Full Moon on July 3rd. And this is one where it will be a Capricorn Full Moon sesqui-square Mars. Like I said, Venus in a square to Uranus. We'll be still feeling that energy. A lot of shifts going on in relationships, money dynamics, paradigms, and really calling us to greater states of inner resolve as we experience these paradigms that are shifting our sense of reality. It is in that week that we have Mercury squaring off with Chiron, always kind of needing to heal some wounds as it regards to paradigms we have, but luckily we end it with Mercury trining Neptune. There's kind of like seeing the higher octave of all these changes that are taking place. In the last week, where we fully embody the paradigm shift that's taking place, whether we've helped ourselves through it in preparation for that, or we're kind of getting these harsh reality checks during the Capricorn Full Moon. It is a week where I think that we'll be mentally catching up with it all. Mars will move into Virgo, giving us that sense of one step in front of the other. And then we have Mercury opposing Pluto and coming into the sign of, then entering the sign of Leo and squaring off the nodes. Just a note, we had Mars in opposition to Pluto on around May 19th to the Taurus new moon, then Venus in an opposition to Pluto on June 5th, and this will be the last personal planet, Mercury, opposing Pluto, fully shifting us into a whole new paradigm. But I do think that there's some connections there with those dates. So this is an opportunity for us to fully mentally catch up with everything that's shifted in preparation for the midpoint of the eclipse, which is going to be significantly calling us to pioneer radical new ways forward. We end this moon cycle with Mercury, the ruler of this Gemini new moon, squaring off with Jupiter, really asking us to, or giving us this expansiveness when it comes to new opportunities within this new paradigm. And expansiveness, kind of like, okay, we're in this new paradigm now, having this optimistic, courageous, because Mercury will be in the sign of Leo by that time, as it makes a square to Jupiter, and really open to new possibilities. So this is a moon cycle really calling us to prepare our minds for major new paradigms. We will be hitting the midpoint of the eclipse that then will be calling us to tangibly pioneer those radical new ways forward. All right, so that's what I have, guys. For those on the subscription, on the member dashboard, you can now find the updated Gemini New Moon Synchronicity log. I will also, by the way, be sending that out on the newsletter. For anybody that hasn't joined that, I do send that one at the new moon issue each month. Also, for those on the subscription, you can get the monthly breakdown of transits. That's available as well on the member dashboard, along with the moon moods log, along with the moon alerts that alerts you when the moon moves into a different sign. As you know, that's how I categorize or kind of bulk each of these transits, so it tells a story throughout the week. And last but not least, the eclipse journal. If you wanted to go back to the eclipses that happened back on April 20th and follow along with each of these moon cycles and how they're feeding into that overarching story for you personally. All right, I will leave it with that. Now, wishing all of you a blessed Gemini new moon. Bye for now.